When your child is seen as too much. Hi, beautiful mum. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been writing about advocacy and how speaking up for your child can take courage, especially when your child struggles in environments like school. This week, I want to talk about reframing behaviour, because sometimes before we can advocate clearly for our child, we often have to begin by changing the way we see their behaviour. That doesn't mean ignoring behaviour that needs support or guidance, boundaries or teaching. It means that sometimes our child's behaviour is giving us clues about what feels hard for them, how their brain works, what kind of environment helps them, and what support they may need to do well. And sometimes behaviour that looks different from other children may be hiding a strength that we haven't recognised yet. My son Pete, for example, was louder than the other children. He couldn't sit still for long periods of time, and he found it hard to follow instructions. At school, that behaviour was often seen as naughty or disruptive. And because Pete found it hard to learn in the classroom, he failed something he loved the most, music, because he couldn't learn how to read it. But that didn't stop him. He taught himself how to play his dad's drums, won the talent competition at school, and now at 23 he plays saxophone and DJs. But I feel sad because when I look back now, there were other moments when Pete's energy, volume and need to move was seen as a problem. He was turned down for the school play because he was considered too disruptive. And maybe the stage was the place where some of that energy belonged. But because I didn't know how to advocate for him back then, he missed those opportunities. And that is why I believe reframing matters. Because behaviour that can seem too much in one environment can become a strength in another if it is understood and supported differently. A child who's loud may need help learning when their volume is too much for others. But that doesn't mean their expressiveness is wrong. Or the child who questions everything may need help learning how to ask respectfully. But that doesn't mean their strong reasoning or sense of fairness should be crushed. And a child who becomes deeply focused on one interest may need help with flexibility. But that doesn't mean we should see their passion, memory or deep thinking as the problem. When we reframe behaviour, we're not saying the behaviour is okay or that it doesn't need support. We're just saying let's pause long enough to understand what this behaviour might be telling us so we can support our child without making them feel wrong. Pete still needed help learning when his volume was too much for others. When movement was okay and when it was distracting, he still needed adults around him who could guide him. But there is a big difference between guiding your child and making them feel like who they are is wrong. Because when our child is always corrected for the way they move, speak, feel, learn or express themselves, they can begin to believe that their difference is the problem. And when we advocate for our child's differences, they have a better chance of being supported without being shamed. This week I've created a resource called the Behaviour Reframe Guide to help you reframe behaviour, recognise possible strengths and advocate for the support your child needs. Sometimes advocacy starts with one small reframe and looking for the strength as well as the struggle, because sometimes the thing that looks hard now may become part of your child's strength later in life.